Alright, let's talk about Tzeentch. Hello everyone, and recently I've been playing some Tzeentch campaigns. I've had the little bit of an itch as I was painting up some Tzeentch demons very recently. And I've come to the conclusion, Tzeentch is boring. Which kinda sucks, considering that there was a lot of drama revolving around Tzeentch and some other factions, obviously Shadows of Change. There was a lot of fixing, but unfortunately Tzeentch didn't really get a lot. Now, this isn't revolving around the fact that Tzeentch is missing a third legendary lord, which it very much is. And as much as I'd like a third legendary lord, I don't think that's going to solve the issues with the current two lords. So, let's talk about this. And let's start off with the Changeling, because I feel like the Changeling is okay, and really only needs one minor fix to make it a little bit more replayable, because as it stands, there is no reason to play the Changeling more than once. The Changeling is a very unique character when compared to most others in Total War Warhammer, because you're not really building an empire, you're just kinda being a nuisance. And that fits with his lore incredibly well. I know some people didn't like the idea of him, but I would argue that it does fit the theme, and the gameplay isn't too bad, despite the fact that you can't really lose. This is something which a lot of people had gripes with, but I feel like they did this in design with what the character represents. He's supposed to be hidden, he's supposed to be disappearing into random locations, and he's supposed to be sowing discord. The problem with this campaign, I feel, is that you start off in the Empire, and every other campaign that you start off with him is once again in the Empire, which is pretty odd, considering that there is a scheme system with multiple theaters of war. In fact, this theater system, which you can see on schemes, is kind of proof that what they could have easily done, and this is something that I've spoken about many times, is as soon as you start your campaign or right before, you can pick where he would start. This would allow you to have a totally different campaign in very different stylings. Now, I know a lot of people would say, well, you can just start in the Empire as normal and then just choose where to go next. And yes, that's true, but a lot of people actually quit their campaigns fairly early on into a standard new campaign. It very much depends on the race and the faction, but the idea here is just allowing for an element of choice. I think that's something that's very much missing with quite a few factions in Warhammer 3. In fact, it would add quite a lot more to the campaign if you had access to starting in different locations. This would mean that you could then tailor the narrative to your own idea rather than spending a fair amount of time in the Empire and then going off somewhere else. I think a lot of people just do the short victory before they get bored, and to be honest, I can kind of see that. Having the element of choice from the very beginning would make this campaign a lot better. And it's not like this hasn't been done before. There have been mods for other factions that do that. You start a campaign, and then you get a pop-up, which will then say, where do you want to go? It's that simple. It won't solve every problem, but it'll make it more fun. Now, Kairos is a very interesting topic here, because he has a unique mechanic, which is only available to him. And it's really weird, right? Because that means that this faction has nothing really going for it. Now, this could change in the future if Creative Assembly actually remember that VIKRAM is there. It's not like, you know, when the fan base reminds them and they go, oh yeah, we forgot about that. While that update did really bring Kairos into a better point, it brought Kairos into a better point, if you get what I mean. It only fixed him up, not the issues with the race and the faction. Tzeentch did actually get a small update in that regard, passing through some skills and passing through stuff, but I don't think it even do the usual monogod updates. You know, the whole thing of like, well, if you build up the demonic building chain, then you can't build up mortals. Which, yeah. That's become more common with the other monogod factions, and it does feel a lot better because you can incentivize and theme a little bit more. And I think that's something that's kind of missing. That's for the race as a whole, and we're not going to jump in too much on that until later on in the video. Instead, we should focus a little bit more on Kairos. Like I said, the Fragments of Sorcery stuff is pretty cool, right? As you level up, automatically you'll start getting some skill points, and then that will go into the fragments where you can switch around your spells and build custom lores. That's awesome for Kairos. For one character in a myriad of characters that you'll have access to when you're playing the Fateweaver faction, because you're going to be getting up loads of different armies, especially since where you start is pretty damn aggressive and you're going to be dealing with a lot of problems overall. I mean, let's be fair here. You've got Teclis coming for you, you've got Oxyotl coming for you at the same time that you're trying to get rid of that minor Nurgle faction and Slaanesh faction. So you're dealing with constant warfare. Once you deal with Teclis, then you've got Warzag coming down for you. The problem here is that Kairos can't be everywhere, right? Even though he is your best lord, and still going to suffer against savage orcs when they start turning their attention towards you or the relentless oxyotl spam. There is nothing to really set him apart. A unique character mechanic is not a unique faction mechanic. Now, the argument can be said that maybe there's not a lot of unique mechanics for the other base game lords, which is true. I mean, right now, there is something unique for Nikari, which is great. You know, it's the whole converting demon princes thing. And even then, that's only for maybe 1 or 2 times that you're going to do it in a campaign, but still very useful for the very beginning. And obviously, Kugath has access to the super plagues, basically just making him a lot stronger, which I very much like and is very much on theme on him. Skarbrand, meh. He has nothing. Which is really weird, considering that the perfect mechanic does exist already in game and could be retooled. But then again, Omens of Destruction was rather lackluster in terms of additions and reworks, barring Wurzag, who got a lot of attention, and, you know, good on him. Now, I'm not saying that Kairos needs a full-on rework whilst the others didn't really get anything, because, well, that wouldn't really be fair. But what Kairos does need is something a little bit more themed for him. Make the campaign a little bit more worth it, so you've got something a little bit stronger to give you something different. Kairos should be incentivized to recruit more demons instead of just a bit of a mix. This is future-proofing for... I don't know if Igrim's even going to come up anymore, you know? At this point... You know, it's wishful thinking, but they like to be quiet about so much shit. But yeah, Kairos should be incentivized to recruit more demons, meaning that you should be incentivized to recruit more heralds of Tzeentch, with the ultimate push of getting as many Lord of Change lords as possible. I've started a new campaign with the purpose of just like removing Kairos and going through the lords. You see, from the lord menu, right, when you're selecting Kairos, you're incentivized to have multiple armies, right? Your lords get more experience faction-wide by around 20%. You're going to likely push towards the Chaos Lords, right? Because they're generally better. And that's pretty disappointing, because you're not really pushed towards getting more Lords of Change up. And it's got a lot to do with a few things, like, say, for example, your Heralds having pretty awful skill points, right? I think Heralds overall aren't great for pretty much every monogod faction, but the Tzeentch one, they're very squishy. Right? The skill points that they have are very risk reward, right? Like the 200% experience to get closer to a lot of change, but taking massive issues there with a leadership hit and obviously wound times being increased a lot. And your main buff for your Tzeentch stuff, right? Like, so you're shooting the missile strength and stuff for the pink horrors and the blue horrors being tied to a skill that if you get that, you can't really get the other skills either. Sure, the Chaos Lords and the Sorcerer Lord aren't amazing, but they are actually a lot better considering that they can hold out a lot more in terms of combat. Not just like dying because they got sneezed on. I would argue that they are the worst of the heralds. The Khorne one's very good at melee and can hold its own, the Nurgle one's very defensive, and the Sinesh one is incredibly fast. You've got that speed with Tzeentch, but the problem is that you have to wait until you can get the flying chariots, and even then, you are a sitting target because the AI will prioritize that. It depends on the player and how much you rush a character to level up, but it'll take a while to get yourself a Lord of Change, and then you're met with... well, 6 skill points that you can only really pick 2. And yes, it is a quite good lord, but you're going to suffer through so much and it'll still get targeted. If you want to make this lord much more viable, especially for Kairos, and I think this is what should be done for Kairos alone, is giving them a few skill points that they can actually take with 2 and giving them 2 full lores. Right? So Kairos can go between all the lores and kind of make his lore up. Give the Exalted Lord of Change, which is why he's exalted, access to both the lore of Tzeentch and the lore of Metal. Make them much more viable, so that way they're a lot more powerful. They'll still take a while to get in, and obviously you are still taking that risk, because if you're making them Exalted Lords of Change quite early, you lose out on immortality, which is a very stupid thing, by the way, but this is just enough to give him something special. A unique way of playing with the Lords of Change. Sure, it's not incredibly unique considering that this is the only normal faction for Tzeentch at the moment, but I really, really hope that Creative Assembly aren't just sneaking Igrim under the rug and that's it, you know? Now, this won't solve every problem that Tzeentch has, let's be very clear there. stuff needs to be changed around just to kind of make things better, right? So the cults, right? There's nothing to them. Cults for Tzeentch should be much larger than normal cults. You get those really cool ones, obviously, with the Changeling, but I feel like Tzeentch as a whole should have a structured cult system more in line with that of a Skaven Undercity. More buildings, more options. You're supposed to be the change of the ways. There's supposed to be more manipulations going on. Tzeentch's tech tree is frankly atrocious. At the very beginning, like, you get a small buff towards Marauders and stuff, but if you're playing as a demon faction, if you're playing as Kairos, you should be incentivized to take more demons. There's barely any really good buffs in your tech tree for pink horrors, I'd say, which kind of sucks. I'm not gonna lie. And you won't get the actual decent buffs towards your pink horrors until you get the Cult of Change, which is a tier 5 settlement, by the way. That takes absolute ages to get up, whilst other armies are really benefiting from that dramatically. It's super, super odd on how the tech tree was built up. It sometimes feels like it's actively playing against you. Not only that, but Tzeentch's economy is in the toilet. And it just sucks. I feel like, again, this is going back to cults. Cults should be able to generate money for you once you're building up your basic infrastructure. Early on, you're caught between a rock and a hard place because once Oxyotl and Teclis turn their attentions to you, you need multiple armies to be able to defend yourself. Veteran players won't have that issue, but newer players will. I feel like it's a very big flaw, and this is still the fallout from Shadows of Change. There's not been a lot going on for Tzeentch. A lot of attention went to fixing up some stuff. Yes, Kislev got a fantastic rework, in all honesty. And Tzeentch doesn't need that level of a rework, but they definitely need to be updated to be brought in line. There's certain aspects here which just make it a frustrating race. And it's a massive shame. I feel like you can have so much fun with Tzeentch, but there's just not enough going on. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about Tzeentch today, just because, like, you know, I've been interested. I've been looking at building up and painting up a Lord of Change for the tabletop channel, which will be linked in the description below. And that made me want to play some Tzeentch stuff, but then I started seeing a lot of issues there, which kind of sucks, right? I mean, the benefit of the tabletop is it makes me want to play Total War, right? And then Total War makes me want to, like, do some stuff with the tabletop. It just sucks that this one wasn't feeling too great. Still going to continue the campaign because I've started steamrolling and I'm having fun with it, but I feel like little fixes like that, a small patch, would be wonderful. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of discussion, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.